We're going to start with some really good news today because there's just so much negativity. We're going to talk about a victory that the grassroots deserves credit for, that President Trump deserves credit for, and also our guest, Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is the host of The Matt Walsh Show, filmmaker of Am I a Racist and What is a Woman? First, Matt, it is Juneteenth. I see that you're in the office working today.
I am. I was a little concerned that you would start this segment without wishing me a happy Juneteenth, but thank you for acknowledging this very important. I still have to keep working. I have to keep working. As podcasters, we're crucial to the ongoing functioning of the United States. But that doesn't mean that I'm not celebrating this really important day.
Somebody has to fund the reparations, and that will be us. So, Matt, there was a huge victory yesterday at the Supreme Court that really was something that you started in Tennessee, and you started even before that of your decades-long work criticizing the transgender industrial complex. Walk our audience through this triumph at the Supreme Court yesterday.
Yeah, this was a huge, I think, a historic win at the Supreme Court, which the Supreme Court found that our law that was passed here in Tennessee banning the mutilation of children in the name of quote unquote gender affirmation or gender transitions. They found that law is valid, that law is not unconstitutional, that we in fact do have the right in Tennessee to regulate and ban these kinds of barbaric practices, which means of course also that the dozens of states across the country that have passed similar bans, those bans will stand now. And it also means, most importantly, really, that there's no excuse for the Republicans in Congress right now to not pass a federal ban. So all of those things are now totally on the table. This was a crushing defeat for the trans lobby, for the trans activists. And I think for the gender transition industry, the gender butchery industry, this was, the fight continues in a lot of ways, but also I would say this was probably the final nail in its coffin. I think this was the death blow to the gender butchery industry. So just a great day all around.
Yeah, and so why? Explain how. I think I understand that, but this now allows states to pass similar laws. It's not yet a nationwide ban, and it's very clear that the Supreme Court did not weigh in or issue an opinion on the merits of child mutilation or gender transition. They did just say that this does not impact the Equal Protection Clause. So explain that a little bit further, Matt, and give the argument a little bit deeper as to why this is a death nail in the coffin of the trans industrial complex.
Right. The Supreme Court didn't find that these kinds of practices themselves are unconstitutional, and therefore so this doesn't become a nationwide ban. Now, I think they could have found that. That would have been great. I think that actually not only is it not unconstitutional to ban the practices, but the practices themselves are unconstitutional because they infringe on the human rights of children. So they could have gone that far. They didn't. I didn't expect them to, but they went as far as they needed to because it enables states to pass these laws. And as I said, there's no reason not to. And it found, the argument on the other side was, of course, an absurd. They have no good arguments. They're defending something that's literally indefensible. But their argument, such as it was that this was somehow an infringement on the Equal Protection Clause because it discriminates. The laws that ban these procedures discriminate based on sex, which makes no sense for so many reasons. Starting with the fact that it doesn't do that, actually. What the law says is that you cannot castrate and mutilate a child for the sake of changing their gender, no matter the sex of the child. It doesn't matter if the child is male or female, you cannot do that. So it doesn't discriminate based on sex. And also, and this was an important point, and you find this in the majority opinion, and this was something that during the arguments came up quite a bit, which is that, okay, if this is somehow unconstitutional, it's a violation of the Equal Protection Clause, then it must be discriminating based on some sort of immutable characteristic. But the problem is that even the pro-trans side will tell you that transgenderism, if it even exists, if it's really a thing at all, which it isn't, but if it is, even according to them, it's not an immutable characteristic. It can change by the day. If I wake up today and say that I'm a woman, then I am. If I wake up tomorrow and say I'm a man, then I'm a man. So even according to them, it's not an immutable characteristic. So the whole argument just doesn't just doesn't work. And the reason why I think it's the nail in the coffin, the fatal blow, is because this was the trans activists' only hope, was that the courts would bail them out. And trans activists for years have been very confident, as the tide turned against them culturally and dozens of states passed these laws. They were very confident because they said, hey, the courts will bail us out. They always do. The courts are going to come back around and say, you can't do this. That was their only hope, because if the courts don't bail them out, now they're left with what? Just the argument. Now they have to go on a level playing field, right? And they have to actually make the argument for why we should be chemically castrating children. And they can't win the argument because the argument's insane. I mean, this is not even an 80-20 issue. I think this is like a 95-5 issue, really. The number of Americans who actually think it's okay to chemically castrate children is vanishingly small. And so their only hope was some sort of bailout from the courts, and it didn't happen.
So this still allows blue states to continue their butchery, and these trans sanctuary states. What does this mean for the nationwide ban that you and I are seeking, including President Trump's phenomenal executive order that he wrote that is now currently in the courts somewhere? Does this impact it at all? And how are we going to advance a nationwide ban and bring that to reality?
Well, I think Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene already has a bill that she wrote that codifies Trump's executive order on this exact issue. And the way that it impacts it is that it means that there's just no reason not to do it. You could absolutely pass this bill. And it's one of those relatively rare times in politics where the clearly morally right thing to do is also clearly the politically popular thing to do. Things don't always line up that way. There are plenty of times when the right thing to do is not the politically popular thing, but in this case it is. So this is a total winner for Republicans, and you have to do it because, as you point out, you've got these so-called trans sanctuary states like California. And listen, we're protecting kids in Tennessee, and that's fantastic, but children in California have to be protected too. Like, just the fact that a child happened to be born, was cursed with being born in California, shouldn't mean that now they're going to get chemically castrated and butchered and injured for the rest of their life in these permanent ways. And so we have to pass this ban, and it's a total winner, because what it means is that the Democrats are going to have to get up and they're going to have to make the case on the record for why it's okay to cut the breasts off of 15-year-old girls and castrate 12-year-old boys. And I'll tell you right now, they don't want to do that. They do not want this fight. They don't want to make this argument. They'd rather it just go away. They're hoping that Republicans will be happy with the Supreme Court victory and then move on like it's the end of it. And that's why we can't do that.
No, and you saw Elizabeth Warren come out yesterday saying that this was insensitive to young kids and their parents. Okay, let's have that debate out and open. Let's make 2028 or the 2026 midterms partially about whether or not we should have a castrating business in this country that profits off of the removal of genitals. And it's just amazing. We don't have enough time to dive into this in this segment, Matt, but how public opinion has switched on this topic the last decade is amazing. Can we get Asa Hutchinson on Tucker Carlson? Can we get that? You remember this, Matt? I want to replay this. That was one of the seminal moments when Asa Hutchinson, neoliberal, called himself a Republican governor of Arkansas, went to defend the chemical castration of children on the Tucker Carlson program like 7 or 8 years ago, and Tucker called them out. Republicans used to be for this, not anymore.